Hello and most welcome to 1846. We will today continue with the lecture started with 1844. The Way the World Ends, the Spectre Revealed and Made Manifest by Jorunn Okland. And last time we went into look at how action makes something real, and what one could call the misunderstanding of a pure signifier leads us astray. And sharp definitions where there is no entering of the other become attenuated, weak, less telling, not able to transmit as much. And I mentioned many times before that the modern academia is very narrowed down. They use a language that lives under the idea that there are different divisions in knowledge. It's something coming from either the misunderstanding or the picture, that confusing explanation for what's happening, or the McGill-Christian left hemisphere take on reality, where everything is in small parts and there are different subjects. The idea of separating, for instance, man's faith, belief in God into one subject is a construction of the left hemisphere. Everything in small, nicely made compartments. In some ways, that thinking is very close to an accountant who has different columns for everything and say, it's better to separate them. And where it's true in accountants, and I'd say if you're an engineer, it makes for some sense, but it doesn't do that when it comes to religion, theology, philosophy, intelligence, consciousness, and so forth. And I'll go to where we last ended, page 270. And the subchapter 2, Christianity as Story of Success. First, in order to follow the further argument, it is necessary to nuance some popular assumptions concerning Marx and Engels's take on religion. That religion is the opium of the people is the most famous statement by Marx on religion. The statement, taken from the introduction to his contribution to the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, is representative of his fierce Religionskritik. although the context of the quote severely modifies it. The statement has been quoted frequently by Christian groups in the post-war period as the proof text in need of no further explanation or questioning that Marxism and Christianity are incompatible. This perception does need further scrutiny because the statement was neither the only one made by Marx and Engels on the topic of religion, nor was it their excuse for not taking religion seriously. Nor does it mean that there is nothing of interest to be found in their writings for scholars of religion. At the moment, the scholar working the most intensively in this area is Roland Bohr, and I can only refer the reader interested in the intersections between biblical and Marxist studies to his work. Especially Friedrich Engels' engagement and fierce discussions with some biblical scholars of his time show that Marx and Engels took religion extremely seriously, and Engels repeatedly returns to the fact that his own views on religion are based on German liberal biblical scholarship. He just takes the logical materialist consequences of this scholarship. Prompted by the French revolutionary communists before them, who had referred to early Christianity, Marx and Engels took a special interest in the question of whether early Christianity in fact was a kind of early communist movement. The French philosopher, biblical scholar Renan, who Engels liked to read and then argue with, was the mediating figure in this respect. As Engels says in the opening lines of his essay on the history of early Christianity. The history of Christianity has notable points of resemblance with the modern working class movement. Like the latter, Christianity was originally a movement of oppressed people. It first appeared as the religion of slaves and emancipated slaves. Of poor people deprived of all rights, of peoples subjugated or dispersed by Rome. Both Christianity and the workers' socialism preach forthcoming salvation from bondage and misery. Christianity places this salvation in a life beyond, after death, in heaven. Socialism places it in this world, in a transformation of society. Both are persecuted and baited. In spite of all persecution, nay, even spurred on by it, they forge victoriously, irresistibly ahead. 300 years after its appearance, Christianity was the recognized state religion in the Roman world empire. And in barely 60 years, socialism has won itself a position which makes its victory absolutely certain. Thus, part of the benefit of this comparison between early Christianity and socialism is that it makes the growth of the socialist movement understandable, and its final victory more plausible. The success of the former is a lesson to be learnt, copied, and eventually superseded by the latter. In addition to the use of early Christianity as a historical model for the socialist movement, there's also an aesthetic use of biblical language, metaphors, symbolism, and allegory in Marx and Engels's texts. Such use functions as a mirror of Marx and Engels's own contemporary world, and is no less interesting than their use of the Bible in historical reconstruction. This twofold use of the Bible as a historical source to early Christian social realities and as an allegory of one's own time is one we will find also when we turn to their use of the book of Revelation proper. Three, the presence of the book of Revelation in the works of Marx and Engels. I will continue by presenting some main texts where Marx and Engels deal with the book of Revelation. A problem presenting itself straight away is the selection of materials. Their work is interspersed with so many vague or explicit intertextual references to the book of Revelation that we cannot deal properly with them within the limits of this essay. Only works where the book of Revelation or ideas from it are engaged more concretely will be discussed. However, one short example of an intertextual reference deserves mention. It is found in the Communist Manifesto. Where they very significantly link the concepts of utopia and the New Jerusalem and describe the former in derogatory terms as a dwarfed version of the latter. But there is a further intertextual link, even in the titles of the respective works, Manifesto and Revelation. What is revealed is made manifest. The future encoded in writing is remembered and made manifest in the present. There are thus not only thematic interconnections between John's revelation and Marx and Engels's manifesto, also the approach to their visions of the new world has important similarities. And naturally, as Peter Osborne points out, the title of Engels's first draft of what later became the Manifesto was a communist confession of faith. Say, oh, oh, oh. The writings by Marx that engage the book of Revelation in more than such general terms are the critical Last Judgment and a chapter in German ideology entitled The Revelation of John. I will give the most attention to the former, but also shortly comment on the latter. Among Engels's works there are the Book of Revelation and his On the History of Early Christianity. I will present the 4 works in chronological order. Concentrate on certain typical features. Analyze how they approach the book of Revelation and look for similarities and differences among them. I will also place Marx and Engels's interest in the book into a broader context. Four. Marx's The Critical Last Judgment. The
The
critical
critical
last
last
judgment
judgment
is
is
the
the
final
final
9th
ninth
chapter
chapter
of
of
the
the
first
first
joint
joint
venture
venture
of
of
Karl
Karl
Marx
Marx
and
and
Friedrich
Friedrich
Engels,
Engels,
an
an
1845
1845
book
book
entitled
entitled
The
The
Holy
Holy
Family,
Family,
or
or
Critique
Critique
of
of
Critical
Critical
Critique.
Critique.
The
The
book
book
in
in
which
which
they
they
wrote
wrote
all
all
chapters
chapters
except the
except the
introduction
introduction
separately.
separately. Separately.
But more fun. Some fun things. In their
In their
sustained
sustained
critique
critique
of
of
a
a
young,
young,
aspiring
aspiring
group
group
of
of
Hegelians
Hegelians. Hegelians.
with
With
views
views
relatively
relatively
close
close
to
to
their
their
own,
own,
especially
especially of
Bruno
Bruno
Bauer
Bauer
and
and
his
his
brother
brother
Edgar,
Edgar. The brother Edgar,
who
who
in
in
this
this
context
context
constitute the
the
Holy
Holy
Family.
Family. Holy, holy.
Already
Already
the
the
title
title
of the
of the
book,
book
then,
then
gives us
gives us
an
an
indication
indication
of how
of how
biblical
biblical
language
language
is used
is
in it
used in it
as a
as a
mirror
mirror. Mirror
of
of
contemporary
contemporary
characters
characters
and
and
events.
events. Hallelujah.
It
It
represents
represents
Marx's
Marx's
only
only
extensive
extensive
piece
piece
of
of
literary
literary
criticism.
criticism.
And I
And
think
I
we
think
should
we
be
should be
grateful
grateful
for that.
for that.
He is
He
brimming
is brimming
with
with sarcasm,
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 emotion,
emotion,
and
and
contempt.
contempt.
Polemics
Polemics
and
and
very
very
approximate
approximate
characterizations
characterizations
take the
take the
place
place
of the
of
clear
the clear
analysis
analysis
for
for
which
which
he
he
is
is
so
so
famous.
famous.
But it
But
is
it is
very
very
entertaining.
entertaining. world.
As a
As a
final
final
chapter,
chapter,
the
the
critical
critical
last
last
judgment
judgment
occupies a
occupies a
similar
similar
position
position
in
in
relation to
relation to the
Holy
Holy
Family Book
Family Book
as the book
as the book
of
of
Revelation
Revelation
itself
itself
does
does
in
in
relation
relation
to the
to the
New
New
Testament.
Testament.
A
A
bizarre
bizarre
epilogue,
epilogue,
like
like
Greek
Greek
tragedies,
tragedies,
satire play,
satire play,
if you
if you
like, if
like,
you will,
if you will,
in a
in
different
a
genre
different genre
and modus
and modus
than the
than
Modus.
the
rest of the book.
rest of the book.
Rest of the book.
The
The
difference is
difference is
that
that
whereas
whereas the
continuity
continuity
between
between
the book
the
of
book of
Revelation
Revelation
and the
and the
rest
rest
of the New
of the New
Testament
Testament
has been
has been
contested
Contested.
from the
from
beginning,
the beginning,
not least
not
in
least in
Engels's
Engels's
own work
own work
discussed
discussed
below.
below.
Marx's
Marx's
critical
critical
last
last
judgment
judgment
drives home
drives
the
home
same
the
point
same
as
point as
the
the
previous
previous
chapters
chapters
by
by
himself
himself
and
and
Friedrich
Friedrich
Engels,
Engels,
only
only
in a
in
different
a
form
different form
and genre.
and genre.
Rudolf of
Rudolph of
Wittgenstein
Gerolstein
is the
is the
protagonist of
protagonist of
Eugene
Eugene
Sue's
Sue's
sentimental,
sentimental,
not
not
sufficiently
sufficiently
socialist
socialist
Aja baja.
Les
Les
Mystères de
Mystères
Paris,
de Paris,
published two
published two
years earlier.
years earlier.
This is
This
the
is
work
the work
Marxist
Marxist
analyzes,
analyzes
or
or
rather
rather
ridicules,
ridicules
in the
in the
previous chapter
previous chapter
of the
of the
Holy
Holy
Family,
Family.
Holy.
chapter 8,
Chapter 8,
entitled
entitled
The
The
Worldly
Worldly
Peregrination
Peregrination
and the
and the
Transfiguration
Transfiguration
of
of
Critical
Critical
Criticism,
Criticism,
or
or
critical
critical
criticism
criticism
in the
in the
person of
person of
Rudolf,
Rudolf,
Prince
Prince
of
of
Gerolstein.
Gerolstein.
7
7
out of the
out of
8
the 8
sub-chapters
sub-chapters
of the
of the
worldly
worldly
peregrination
peregrination has
revelation
revelation in the
title,
title,
which
which
prepare us for
prepare
what
us for what
follows in
follows in
chapter 9,
chapter 9,
the
the
critical
critical
last
last
judgment.
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 Marx points
Marx points out
that
that
just as
just as
Jehovah
Jehovah,
Oj,
through
Jehovah.
through
Christ
Christ,
throughout the
throughout the
Bible
Bible,
has
has
saved the
saved the world.
critical
critical
criticism
criticism
through
through
its
its
son,
son,
Prince
Prince
Rudolph,
Rudolph,
Prince Rudolph.
has
has
twice saved
twice
the world
saved the
from
world
ruin,
from ruin,
but now
but now
decrees
decrees
the end
the
of the
end
world.
of the world.
Hmm.
That is in
That
the
is in the
Hegelian
Hegelian
terms.
terms.
The
The
protagonist
protagonist,
Rudolph
Rudolph,
is
is
presented
presented
in
in
Hegelian
Hegelian
and
and
Christ-like terms
Christ-like terms
as more
as more
fruitful for
fruitful for
mankind
mankind
than all
than
the
all the
experiences
experiences
of the
of the
latter
latter
in its
in its
history.
history.
Rudolph's
Rudolph's
personal
personal
character
character
is the
is the
revealed
revealed
mystery of
mystery of
all
all
mysteries.
mysteries.
Oi, oi, oi. All mysteries.
The,
The,
the
the
revealed
revealed
mystery of
mystery of
pure
pure
criticism.
criticism.
Finally,
Finally,
in this
in this
chapter,
chapter,
Marx
Marx
mockingly
mockingly
calls
calls
Rudolph
Rudolph
the
the
critical
critical
Hercules.
Hercules.
Able
Able
to
to
crinin,
crine,
to
to
discern between
discern
good and
between good
evil,
and evil,
and do
and
good.
do good.
Good. Oi, oi, oi.
The
The
following chapter,
following chapter,
the
the
critical
critical
last
last
judgment,
judgment,
which is
which
our
is our
center of
center
attention,
of attention,
takes the
takes the
form of
form
a
of a
paraphrase
paraphrase
of
of
Revelation
Revelation
10, 1
10,
to
1 to
7.
7.
And I
And
saw
I saw
another
another
mighty
mighty
angel
angel
coming down
coming
from
down from
heaven,
heaven,
wrapped in a
wrapped in
cloud,
a cloud,
Cloud.
with a
with a
rainbow
rainbow
over his
over
head.
his head.
Oi,
His
His
face was
face
like
was
the sun,
like the sun,
the sun.
and his
and
legs
his legs
pillars of
pillars of
fire.
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 He held
He held
a
a
little
little
scroll in
scroll
his
in his
hand,
hand,
And
and he
and
set
he
his
set
right
his right
on the
foot on
sea,
the sea,
and his
and
left
his
foot
left foot
on the
on
land,
the land,
and called
and
out
called
with a
out with a
loud
loud
voice,
voice,
like a
like a
lion
lion
roaring.
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 He
And
called
he
out,
called out,
the
the
seven
seven
thunders
thunders
sounded,
sounded,
Thunder.
and when
and when
the
the
seven
seven thunders
had
had
thundered,
thundered,
Sounded.
sounded,
sounded, And when the seven thunders had sounded, I was about to write,
but I
but
heard a
I
voice
heard a
from heaven
voice from
saying,
heaven saying,
seal up
seal up
what the
what
seven
the seven
founders
founders
said,
have said,
and do not
and do not
write it
write it down.
Silloin.
Then the
Then the angel whom
eyes
I saw
standing on
standing
sea,
on sea,
and the
and the
land
land raised his right hand to heaven,
and
and
swore by him
swore by him
who
who
lives
lives
forever
forever
and
and
ever,
ever,
Ever.
who
who
created
created heaven,
what is in
what
it,
is in it,
the earth,
the earth,
and what is
and
in
what
it,
is in it,
and
and
the
the
sea,
sea,
and what is
and
in
what
it.
is in it.
There will
There
be
will be
no more
no more
delay.
delay.
But in the
But in the
days when the
days when the
seventh
seventh
angel
angel
is to
is to
blow
blow
his
his
trumpet,
trumpet,
the
the
mystery of
mystery
God
of God
will be
will be
fulfilled
fulfilled,
as he
as he
announces to
announces
his
to his
servants,
servants,
the
the
prophets.
prophets.
The prophets.
In
In
Marx's
Marx's
version,
version, the
mighty angel
mighty angel of
Revelation 5
Revelation
2
5 2
and 1
and 1
are
are
merging
merging to
Herr
Herr
Herz,
Herzl,
Herschel.
another
another
but
but
less
less
luminous
luminous member
of the
of the
circle around
circle around the
our
Power
brothers,
Brothers.
rather
Rather cleverly
and
and magnanimity,
Revelations
Revelation's
Zion is
Zion is
changed
changed
into
into another
another city,
mountain city,
Zurich,
Zurich,
Zurich.
so that we
so
get
that we get
I saw
I saw and
a
heard a
mighty
mighty
angel,
angel,
Herr Herz,
Herr Herzl,
flying down
flying down from
Zurich
Zurich
across the
across the
heavens,
heavens,
and he had
and
in
he
his
had
hand
in his hand
a little
a
book
little book
open like
open like the
number
fifth number
of
of
Allgemeine
Allgemeine
Literaturzeitung,
Literaturzeitung,
and he set
and
his
he set his
right foot
right foot
upon the
upon the
Mars
Mars,
and his left
and his
foot
left
upon
foot upon
Charlottenburg,
Charlottenburg,
and he
and he
cried with a
cried
loud
with a
voice
loud
as
voice
when
as when a
a lion
lion
roars,
roareth,
and his
and
words
his
rose
words
like
rose
a dove.
like a dove.
Oh.
Ooh,
Ooh,
chirp, chirp.
chirp, chirp.
Ooh,
Ooh, ooh,
ooh,
ooh, ooh,
ooh.
ooh.
To the
To the
legions,
legions, to the
regions of
regions of
faiths,
faiths,
and the
and the
thunder-like
thunder-like
aspects of the
aspects of the
critical
critical
last
last
judgment.
judgment.
And fittingly,
And
I will put
fittingly, I will
a
put a
pause at
pause at
a
the
critical
critical
last
last
judgment here.
judgment here.
It's an amazingly funny article. The author has a very keen sense of humor.
Indeed.
So we go for some sites here. I do like, especially the last bit here. I'll come back to that later. There, Hitzel, it was really fun. But let's see here. I don't know what page it is, but it's subchapter 3 anyway. And the one that begins with the presence of the book of Revelation. And it's about, I think it's, what could it be, 12 lines down? Well, we begin with however. However, one short example of an intertextual reference deserves mention. It is found in the Communist Manifesto, where they very significantly link the concept of utopia and the New Jerusalem and describe the former in derogatory terms as a dwarfed version of the latter. I think it rhymes rather nicely what we said before when we looked into the New Jerusalem and its relation metaphorically, metonymically, and I would say like a synecdoche of Rome, the whore of Babylon, if you like. So it links the material with the beyond material. There is a sense and an understanding that Rome is sort of the founding part here. It reminds me of metaphorical theory, where for a metaphor to bear its weight, it needs to be an act that is reinforced by doing Rome more and more, being in Rome, understanding Rome, and then lifting that experience, that doing, to the next higher level. So that could be actually a spiritual doing, a more advanced doing. And this I see, and I think I like the repetition. It happened to be in this paper because we had it like 4 times before. And now it's more or less introduced. We know this is important. I call that the synchronicity. Happy misplacements in the Geschichte, what has happened, that takes a linking point, because she also writes there is a link. Isn't that odd? So we get a segue directly to what we said before. And most important, when you have a metaphor, you do something much further than criticize. Let me try it this way, because we used humor here before to get my voice and the understanding easier. Humor, I would say, takes sort of a base, let's call that base Rome here, and with humor you can bring it even further than criticism. It can go further up. So let's imagine that the Christians ironized or were sarcastical about Rome, or just made good-hearted humor even better. Because I don't think there is meant originally to be an opposition between Rome and the New Jerusalem. It was not in their mentality. They could write it, as we learned from Wittgenstein. Words are their use, and little do we know of the use of the time. The only ones are now Julian James, who investigated how words could have meant in antiquity. And this is a gauntlet taken up by Ian McGilchrist. Of course, it's extremely hard to defend, but Ian McGilchrist has some sort of advantage with his background in neurology. But you, of course, if you go to a text, you will read it how you are constituted today. It's a bit sola scriptura, but wherever you go, that will happen. But we don't know the acting meaning of, for instance, 100 years before Christ or 250 years after Christ. This is very interesting. There are some hints to that humor is the area of the right hemisphere, the broader ones. And I come to think here of Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. One of the best introductions to quantum mechanics there ever been. Although it's a book of humor, it shows that complete clash between two things. Let's call it a particle and wave. And in this case, it's a clash between the Rome of the material of absolutely glorious gardens, like the Casa Aureum of Nero, Domus Aurea, where there were even lakes and rivers inside the palace, forests, birds, fisheries, mountains. I'm just imagining to see this glory. No wonder, after seeing or even hearing about that, heaven became possible. You can see the connection. I am pretty sure, and I'm in agreement here with Science of Ian McGilchrist, Barbara Tversky, and of course Lakoff Johnson. It wouldn't be possible for the people before Jesus to imagine heaven like that, because it needs some metaphorical thing to humorize or ironize to start out with. Thinking is not a separate tendency. It needs to be firmly established in doing. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. And we see here now the word link coming up here all of a sudden in the text. This almost unnecessary footnotical mentioning by Jorunn in the text, I'd say that's a clear pointer. It's a connection. if we go to page 274, in the left column, and we go down to the third paragraph, it's about the Prince Rudolf Gerolstein. And here there is some mentioning, very nice as well, about Jehovah. We had a reaction there. The colleague is an ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I thought he was apt to mention it specifically. Marx points out that just as Jehovah, through Christ, throughout the Bible, has saved the world. Critical criticism through its son, Prince Rudolf, has twice saved the world from ruin. But now decrees the end of the world. And here is another interesting link here. We have a parenthesis, and it says that is in Hegelian terms. We know that what they are the thesis, the antithesis, the synthesis. They sort of covers everything. And they are the classical laws, they are the rules for how the world moves about. What do they lack? Well, they lack humor. Hegel's readings, texts are completely humorless for a good reason, because they cover everything. He says, I have all meaning, I have all understanding at my a priori hand. That doesn't make for much surprise, which humor is, or clashes. It seems that Prince Rudolf is, I'd say he is not as suggested that. The little I read about him, I swept through it like 20 years ago. The protagonist Rudolf is presented in Hegelian spiritual and Christ-like terms as more fruitful for mankind than all the experiences of the latter in its history. I think he's not only a mystery, he's humor personified. He goes against the complete overtake, which is thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, something that's been taken up by Derrida as well. Derrida had his beef with Hegel, and how Hegel becomes all-encompassing and rather heavy, I'd say. Maybe the heaviness can make you slouch and make your voice very weak until it disappears. No, acting and meaning is also this humor thing. Something we got from the sadly departed Edward de Bono, who would have able to ascertain a knighthood if he were not to give up his British citizenship. Or at least partly that's what he did for Maltese. That would be nice. He says that understanding, learning is at base humor. And it goes very nice with, I have a marvelous book here. I'm just going to use it. Camera for a second here. You have it. Understanding Intelligence. I don't know how visible that is. By Rolf Pfeiffer and Christian Scheier. It shows that understanding, learning, knowledge, and as we pinpointed many times before, especially abstract thinking is in the movement. And we know, I think it's a pretty good evidential basis in the how many pages by Jimmy Gilchrist, the last one, the first one, the master and his emperor, emissary, the emissary and the master and his emissary, refers to at least 2,500 independent research results. That is including his own research. That's pretty amazing. In the matter with things, 2-volume, the biggest book, even beats the Bible, has maybe 5 times more. It's a massive pointer to that, what Edvard de Bono calls asymmetric thinking is actually thinking. And the other one is the after thing, the explanation. Logic always takes a second chair. You cannot use logic to understand anything. We know that as a fact. And we also know that logic can be used as a communicative thing, explanatory, pedagogical tool. It has loads of different application, but neither logic nor causation belongs to the world. Known as a fact from quantum mechanics, and it's actually humor at base. Do read, if you haven't read it, Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a wonderful odyssey of humor and absurdities, as we usually call absurdities, which I would say is the essence of thinking. And what breaks thinking is the misuse of understanding thinking to be apply explanation and trying to put this straitjacket over your head or your body. And as Pfeiffer shows, if you can't move, you can't think. What did Barbara Tversky show us? When there is movement, there is this higher thinking, complex thinking. You can actually do primitive thinking without moving your limbs very much because it's repetitive, it's habituated. There's still some movement, but hard understanding, as we did now here. I think it was a great example. I get out of my habitual sitting and you added some humor here, and all of a sudden this thing, the link came out. I don't know if it was in the text before, but it's very interesting. It sort of links up to all we said before. Oh, Kalle, please join.
I could mention here that the book The Holy Family, or Critical Critique, it appeared in 1845. That is 1 year after the supposed end of the world. Your Okland doesn't emphasize it, but she mentioned it in the beginning. So it's sometimes dates are important, and it fits with the apocalyptic thinking. Speaking of Engels, but also Hegel, and in his book Glass in English, Derrida pokes fun at Hegel in the very introduction. He says that some French pronounced like eagle, like a frozen eagle.
Yeah.
It sounds like a frozen eagle. So it's kind of humor in this introduction, and it also fits with the intertextuality with John's gospel. Very beginning, John is actually the eagle in Christian symbolism. So there are many levels: humor, intertextuality, genial, and it breaks, so to say, the Hegelian thinking, thesis, antithesis. And we do it with humor, with this frozen eagle. You can imagine Derrida say it loud, eagle, some French, he says and then we could go back to speaking names to Engels. His very name means angel, and perhaps this, I don't know if Karl Marx thought about that also. So many, although he's not poking fun at angels, it would be fitting in one way, but of his.
As well, because that is also more or less anonymous in French.
So let me go to the funny part here. There are many funny parts, but let me see this one. So this is quotation from Revelation chapter 10.
Yes.
Revelation chapter 10. And what I want only to comment on one thing. If you notice that the angel, so he had a little scroll open in his hand. Let me see. Let's read it. And he set his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land and called out with a loud voice like a lion roaring. When he called out, the seven thunders sounded. And when the seven thunders sounded, I, that is John, about to write, but I heard a voice from heaven saying, seal up what the seven thunders have said, and do not write it down. We discussed in another paper, the scholar there points out that before Revelation chapter 13, I think, there John is asked to digest the scroll. And after the digestion of the scroll, everything becomes clear. That is, dates, numbers are made manifest. Before that digestion of the book or the scroll, dates or numbers or whatever, everything was vague. And here we are only at chapter 10. Everything is still vague because everything is more mysterious even here. It's before the real revelation, so to say. So he is asked to seal the things. And I could actually see, let me remind the reader, I think it was a Revelation 10, the Revelation, eat the scroll. Let me see. And it's actually in 10. No, it's in the chapter 10. So this was chapter 10. It's actually, this is the same chapter. Let me see. In verse 9, he says to eat it. So this ends 2 verses before. Seal up what the seven thunders have said. So verse 8, it says that the voice which I heard from heaven spoke to me again. It said, take the open scroll from the hand of the angel who is standing on the sea and on the land. I went to the angel, asked him to give me the small scroll. He said to me, take it and eat it. It will be bitter in your stomach, but it will be as sweet as honey in your mouth. Now after this, there is this revelation that everything becomes clearer. The vagueness is left behind. So I think it's a nice observation. And let me compare now with Marx's satire of this verse. So we have it in, where did we have it? Yes, let me see, where did we have, so let me see, where do we have it, the funny part, yes. Here, it's on page 70 PDF. Here, let's read it, perhaps together. Revelation Zion is changed into another mountain city, Zurich, so that we get, and I heard a mighty angel, her Hirsel, flying down from Zurich across the heavens. and he had in his hand a little book open like the fifth number of the Allgemeine Zeitung.
Literaturseite.
And he said,
That is right.
and so forth, but I will not continue. So this book is actually open, and while let's see, in the text of open, like, I don't know, open, okay, as is it ambiguous, but then still in the book of Revelation still a mystery. Here it's more open. It's already manifested, to use Mark's terminology. It's open, while I think it's more. It's open here too. Let me see, but only open in relative sense. Take a look and scroll. So I will not go into that. I don't know.
There's also something I come to think when mentioning humor is some of the articles we had before, where they look for original. Those writings are also very humorless. There is no absurdities in them. They sort of want to put them into the explanatory form. So the whole article is supposed to be thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, or something like that, and try to make it fit with something they PLA feel private language argument is something inside their heads or out there somewhere. And it's a good evidence that since there's no humor like we saw here, they've fallen into that trap. And it's everything is causality. Therefore, you are following the original, because that's in their minds somehow is more important than you have in front of you, which is an absurdity, of course.
Yes, and Marx.
McGilchrist said that's sacrilegious. To say that a scroll, a Bible that's in the church, it's not original or nothing. It's an invention of the mind. And it's the left hemisphere that is doing that, not reality. It's not correct with quantum mechanics, for instance.
Yes, to clarify for the reader or the listener, is the left hemisphere would say that the Bible, that is actually the physical copy, which is in a Bible, which is in a church, it would, so to say, point out to another Bible, to original,
which is not
or
present.
to the Platonic Bible. While the right hemisphere, according to McGilchrist, it says this is already true. This is already a good thing.
It's already there.
This is already there, so we don't.
But truth, don't use it in a representative way to something that's not present. You wouldn't say the chair is in front of me, but it's not here. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But the left hemisphere do play that trick on us because it's representative. It's whole action, and it's a good action, but it needs to be limited. It should be underneath the master. So nothing is wrong that the left hemisphere does, but the sovereignty, to use a word from the previous writer, the power, the authority should come from the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere, yes, go ahead and do your thing. You create causality. You see things as representative, but there is a bigger picture that you have to obey. And apparently, once the left hemisphere is put in that position, it works better. Much better. It's not suited as a master. And those people become better in doing these things also. I think that's in my eyes a pretty good point that he has a point. Or a witz, to use a Wittgenstein
And yes, even though perhaps we don't like Marx, he he had humor and he thought perhaps with the right side of the brain.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of humor
and
involved.
But
and Engels,
And
they were
Engels,
both
they were
Jewish. I
both
think
Jewish.
that
I think
helped.
that helped.
Jewish humor is
Jewish
well
humor is
renowned.
well renowned.
and I got an idea actually from this paper. So Marx is playing, he's referring to dove and then these onomatopoeic sounds. Excuse me, church. And then to return to what I said earlier about Derrida play poking fun at
Oh, yeah.
Hegel's name, that is some French pronounced like Hegel,
Yeah,
like
I
a frozen
I
eagle.
like that one.
So why is it relevant in this case? It gave me an idea. So many scholars today, academic scholars, say that John, Apostle John, did not write the book of Revelation. Instead, the church fathers said he did write it. So I'm a little bit annoyed at, actually there's even a Swedish scholar at Umeå University who wrote in a paper saying, no, it was not John the Apostle who wrote the book of Revelation. Okay, I'm a little bit, I see this, and I would, if I would ever write a paper about this, which I could because I love the book of Revelation, so I would perhaps take this metaphor about the Hegel eagle and then take it and so John's symbol was actually the eagle in Christianity. If you go to churches, we know the John's, because John, the Apostle John, was supposedly wise as an eagle, and the Jesus that he represents is wise as an eagle. And in the book of Revelation is very wisely written. And I would perhaps take the eagle, that funny
Yeah, do
part.
that.
Do that.
Hooray
So
for
that
that.
For that.
incorporate that in discussion to get of this, I don't know, little bit banal.
It's very naive.
It's
Yeah,
very
banal,
banal,
naive.
That it's not John that Apostle wrote it. It must have been some other person.
And that person
And
is
that
not
person is
present.
not
We don't
present.
know
We don't
about him.
know
It's
about him.
somewhere in
It's
the
somewhere in the
transcendental,
transcendental,
Tegmarkian,
Markian,
Judaevorician world.
Judaevorician world.
Yes, perhaps this John is this frozen John who wrote it in some of the North Pole.
I think
I
it's
think it's
just to cite
just to
something
cite
from Ian
something from
McGilchrist, and I said,
Gilchrist and said, and
I think you're
yeah, I
familiar
think
with
you're
the
familiar with
British
British
Revolution
Revolution
and what happened
what
there.
happened there.
Yes, the King Charles, what was his name? Charles the First was beheaded.
Yeah, later on he was
Later on he
beheaded,
was
and
beheaded, and
they also
they also
like run havoc
run
on the
havoc on the
churches and said,
churches and said,
according to us,
according to
everything
us,
is holy.
everything is holy.
What do they mean
What
by
do they
that?
mean by that?
Do they mean,
Do they mean
in a
in a
Wittgensteinian sense, do
Wittgensteinian
they mean
sense?
that
Do they mean
everything is
that
holy?
everything is
No.
holy? No.
What they mean
What they mean
is that nothing
is
is
that
holy.
nothing is holy.
Because for something
Because
to
for
be
something to
holy,
be holy,
it needs to be
it needs to
followed by
be
an
followed by
act.
an act.
Then there is no
Then there is
act,
no act,
as we read in
as
the
we read
previous
in the
paper.
previous
When there's
paper.
no
When there's
acting,
no
the word
acting, the
lacks
word
meaning.
lacks meaning.
Something that
Something
Pfeiffer
that
will
Pfeiffer would
completely agree with.
completely agree with.
And of course,
And
Ian
of course,
McGilchrist
Ian
and modern
Gilchrist and modern
science.
science.
So what they
So
said,
what they
their
said,
effect,
their
and
effect, and
was that nothing
was
is
that
holy.
nothing is holy.
Take it out
Take it
of
out of
particular
particular
circumstances in the
circumstances
church
in the
hall,
church hall,
with all the
with
things
all
you
the
do
things you
there.
do there.
And
And
Ian McGilchrist, who's a deeply religious man,
religious man
is
is
very, very
very,
down in
very
his heart. He said,
thought. He said,
once you said,
once you
let's
said,
take the
let's take
liturgy
the
out of
liturgy
the
out of
Catholic
the
Church,
Catholic
which would
Church,
be the
which would
second
be the second
concilium in England.
What we can second Vatican Council in the
Yes.
1960s.
What they did
What
there,
they
they
did
took
there,
the
they
meaning
took the
out of the
meaning
word
out of the word
praise,
praise,
hymn,
hymn,
worship,
worship,
venerance,
venerance,
No, they didn't really take it out, but changed it completely, abandoned the Latin for vernacular language and so
which is the
forth.
same
which
thing.
is the same thing.
And it's been
And it's
practiced
been
because
practiced because
we also know
we
for a
also
word
know
to
for a
have
word
its
to
effect,
have
it
its
needs
effect, it needs
practice.
practice.
At least a
At
couple
least
hundred
a couple
years.
hundred years.
Words cannot
Words
have
cannot
meaning
have
just out
meaning
of the
just
blue.
out of the blue.
So what they
So what they
effectively did,
effectively
do
did,
not
do
worship God
not
anymore.
worship God anymore.
And Ian
And
McGilchrist, we know that,
we
what
know
they
that
did
what they
actually.
did actually.
So
So
abandon God,
abandon God.
praise is
Praise is
useless.
useless.
There's no need
There's
to
no need
have
to
any
have any
hymns.
hymns.
There is no
There
Virgin
is no
Mary and
Virgin
so
Mary and so on.
on. It's the 666 if you like.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It was,
It was a disaster.
and it was also pointed out by Fergus King. You remember we went through
Yeah.
Fergus King. Yes. I could.
And imagine all those people that got sick from this. That's something on their souls that would deem them. Let me put this as liturgies. Are you familiar with the liturgies? Liturgies. It's the opposite to an
I like thesis. I like thesis. I like
liturgies is like
understatement. Yes.
an understatement. That would probably give them somewhat of a bad karmic load. Many people doing that harm to monks and nuns and cloisters and monasteries that have been going on for thousands of years, maybe well 1,500 years at tops. That's incredible. What the repent for that would be, I can't even imagine. So, and that is maybe the absolute turn to the left hemisphere where we don't understand how to make words have meaning anymore. And humor, as you so good pointed out here, is an important part of it. This is it's not. Well, it was a bit happenstance we started with this echoing effect because last lecture the laptop was echoing and I thought it was fun to Kalle to echo, so to speak. But it added to the voice and it added to the content and it made for a most marvelous link here. Maybe we should.
Yes, we could end it with a couple of onomatopoetic sounds like no, chirp, and Hegel say like some friends pronounce it like think about a frozen eagle, like an eagle flying in north of Sweden, and it's frozen, and you can compare it with Apostle John, perhaps. Frozen. Eagle pronounces like that. Eagle. Chirp.
Thank you very much, Kalle Lund, for your marvelous humor. Thank you very much for listening in, and have a very pleasant day, morning, or night. Bye-bye.